The airport in Honolulu was alive with the usual chaos. Families pulling strollers, businessmen tapping on laptops, tourists clutching souvenirs, excitement mixed with exhaustion, the energy only airports seemed to have. And there, in the middle of it all, stood a woman no one noticed. She wore a wide straw hat, oversized sunglasses and a loose linen shirt. A paperback mystery novel was tucked under her arm. To the world, she was just another traveler wrapping up a holiday in Hawaii. Her boarding pass read, Emily Parker. Nothing about her screamed special. No flashy luggage, no loud accessories. Just a canvas duffel slung over her shoulder, worn, as if it had traveled across continents already. But Emily Parker was not like the others in line. While passengers scrolled through phones or argued about seats, she scanned the room quietly. Her eyes flicked to the exits, to the security agents, to the man nervously tapping his foot for 20 straight minutes. She noticed everything. She always had. Still, if you asked the gate agent later, she wouldn't even remember Emily's face. That's how invisible she seemed. When her boarding group was called, she walked calmly down the jet bridge. She helped a young mother lift a heavy bag, offered a kind smile, and slid into her aisle seat, 23B. Nothing unusual. Nothing memorable. The cabin filled with the usual sounds, bins slamming shut, children crying, passengers negotiating for space. Emily sat quietly, book open, but eyes watching. She wasn't restless, but she wasn't relaxed either. It was the kind of calm that comes from discipline, from years of training. Because Emily Parker wasn't just a tourist, she was a pilot. A former Air Force captain, someone who had once flown missions through combat skies and landed planes others thought impossible to save, but no one here knew that. To them, she was just another face in the crowd. As the plane taxied down the runway, Emily let out a slow breath. She hadn't flown commercially in over a year, not since she quietly walked away from the cockpit. Hawaii had been her escape. Sunsets, solitude, and anonymity. She had no idea that anonymity was about to be tested in ways she could never have imagined. At 36,000 feet above the Pacific, Flight 782 seemed peaceful. Passengers loosened their seatbelts, ordered drinks, and relaxed into the rhythm of routine air travel. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom with cheerful confidence, but Emily Parker stayed alert. She checked the time. The sounds of the engines, even the movement of the wings through the aisle window. Every detail mattered to her. Then, it happened. A faint vibration beneath her seat. Brief, subtle. Most passengers wouldn't have noticed. But Emily did, and instantly her instinct screamed, that wasn't turbulence, it was something else. And for the first time that flight, Emily Parker felt the familiar pull of readiness. The same feeling she had before combat missions. The same feeling she had before landing a crippled fighter jet. The flight had just begun, but deep inside, Emily already knew this journey was not going to end the way it started. The seatbelt. Sign blinked back on. A calm voice came through the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats. The captain has turned on the seatbelt sign due to expected turbulence. Turbulence. Emily frowned. That didn't match the weather. Report. The skies were supposed to be clear, no storms, no jet stream shifts. Nothing unusual. Minutes later, the plane jolted hard. Overhead, bins rattled. A drink cart crashed to the floor. A child screamed. Gasps filled the cabin. Most passengers clung to their armrests, terrified. But Emily didn't look afraid. She was bracing herself, because she knew this wasn't normal turbulence. Her eyes flicked toward the cockpit door. Still closed, no updates, no reassurance, only silence. She leaned toward a passing flight attendant. "Is everything okay up front?" she asked calmly. The attendant forced a quick smile. "Just turbulence, Mum. Please remain seated." But Emily saw the truth in her eyes. Fear. Confusion. The crew didn't know what was happening either. Then, the plane jerked again, harder. Oxygen masks rattled in their compartments. The muffled sound of alarms bled faintly from the cockpit. Not cabin alerts, not routine warnings, system alarms. Emily knew those tones too well. Suddenly the intercom crackled again. But this time, it wasn't the captain. It was a flight attendant, her voice shaking. "Ladies and gentlemen, if there is a licensed pilot on board, please make yourself known to the crew immediately." The cabin froze. Passengers looked at each other in disbelief. A licensed pilot? On board? Why would they need one? Unless... Emily unclipped her seatbelt and stood. She didn't panic. She didn't run. She simply reached into her bag, pulled out a black nylon folder and flipped it open. Inside, her federal pilot's license, her Department of Homeland Security ID. She spoke firmly, so only the nearest attendant could hear. "My name is Captain Emily Parker, former U.S. Air Force, certified on Boeing and Airbus. I need access to the cockpit now." The flight attendant's jaw dropped. You're a pilot?" "I'm your best chance at landing this plane," Emily replied. Her voice steady, her eyes unwavering. Gasps rippled down the aisle as passengers realized what was happening. The quiet woman in 23B, the one no one noticed, was about to take control of their fate. Emily walked forward. The cockpit door was already unlocked, a bad sign. She pushed it open slowly, and what she saw inside would haunt her forever. The co-pilot was slumped in his seat, unconscious, pale. The captain was barely holding on, his hands trembling on the controls, skin flushed and drenched in sweat. His voice came out broken and weak. "Oxygen failure, something in the vents." Emily moved fast. She sealed the cockpit airflow, pulled a backup oxygen mask over the captain's face. But within seconds, he too collapsed. Now both pilots were down. The alarm screamed. The autopilot had disconnected, and Flight 782 was drifting, slowly off course. Emily sat in the captain's chair. Her hands gripped the controls like they had never left. Her heart pounded, but her mind was clear. She grabbed the radio. "Los Angeles Center, this is Pacific Airways Flight 782. Both pilots incapacitated. I am Captain Emily Parker. I am assuming command. Declaring an emergency. Do you copy?" Static. She. Switched frequencies, tried again. Finally, a distant voice broke through. "Flight 782, confirm." "Who is speaking?" "This is Captain Emily Parker," she repeated. "I'm flying this aircraft, 320 souls on board. We need immediate emergency vector." A pause. Then, "Copy that, Captain Parker. Divert to Edwards Air Force Base. Emergency. Crews are on standby. Can you maintain altitude?" Emily scanned the panels. Autopilot dead. Hydraulics sluggish, navigation flickering. But the engines were steady, fuel tight but manageable. "I can hold altitude," she replied, "but I'll need a straight descent. No steep maneuvers." Back in the cabin, passengers clutched armrests, whispering nervously. No one knew who was flying the plane until the intercom clicked on again, and a new voice filled the cabin. Calm, steady, firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Emily Parker speaking. Both pilots have suffered a medical emergency. I have assumed control of this aircraft. We are diverting to Edwards Air Force Base for an emergency landing. Please remain calm, follow crew instructions, and know this: we are in control." Silence. Then, all 320 passengers turned to each other in shock. The quiet touristy car was their pilot, and now their only hope. Inside the cockpit, alarms kept flashing. The controls felt heavy, unresponsive, like trying to steer a giant metal bird that didn't want to listen. Emily Parker's hands moved with precision. Switches, gauges, trim, thrust. Every second counted. The autopilot was dead. One hydraulic system was failing. Navigation screens flickered on and off, and yet her grip was steady. She had been here before. Not in this exact plane, but in combat, with enemy fire streaking past her canopy and engines ready to die. She had learned one lesson. Fear doesn't fly the aircraft. Discipline does. Back in the cabin, silence spread. No screaming, no chaos, just a heavy, breathless tension. Passengers looked at each other with wide eyes, whispering, "Who's flying? Us now." "Did you see her? She just stood up like she owned the sky." The flight attendants moved quickly between rows, handing out oxygen masks, checking belts. Their leader, Scott, repeated one line over and over: "Stay calm. We have a veteran pilot in control. You're safe." Then, outside the windows, gasps erupted. Two fighter jets slid into formation, one on each wing. Sleek F-16s, grey and menacing, their pilots visible through tinted visors. Some passengers thought they were under attack. Others whispered prayers. But Emily knew the truth. They weren't enemies. They were guardians, escorts sent to make sure. Flight 782 didn't become a disaster over U.S. airspace. Inside the cockpit, Emily saw them too. She gave a small nod, steady as ever. The fighter pilots tilted their wings in silent acknowledgement. They had eyes on her now, and they saw something they didn't expect. A woman, calm and focused, guiding the crippled airliner like she had flown it all her life. "Edwards Tower, this is Flight 782, Emily said firmly. Altitude 19,000 feet. Request clearance for straight-in approach, runway 22L. The radio crackled back. Flight 782, runway 22L cleared. Winds calm. Emergency crews are ready. Fighter escort will break off at 5 miles. Her heart slowed. Her breathing steadied. She whispered to herself, almost there. But not yet. Back in the cabin, passengers braced. Children cried softly. A teenager in row 18 whispered to his father, "She doesn't even look scared." An elderly man muttered, "She walked down that aisle like she owned the sky." People didn't know her name, but already they trusted her with their lives. Emily began descent. The California desert stretched below, flat, golden, endless. The runway at Edwards appeared like a lifeline in the sand, but then another warning light. Her stomach dropped, flap failure. The right wing's flaps had jammed at 22 degrees. The left was stuck at 30. That meant uneven lift. The aircraft would pull hard to one side on landing. Disaster, if she wasn't careful. Emily's jaw tightened. Her hands adjusted the controls. Her right foot pressed harder on the rudder, compensating manually. This landing was going to be brutal, but not impossible. She flicked on the intercom again. "Cabin crew, brace for landing." The attendants echoed her words down the aisle. "Brace, brace, heads down, stay down." Passengers bent forward, clutching the seats in front of them. Silence filled the cabin, broken only by whispered prayers. The runway loomed closer. Altitude, 8,000 feet. Distance, 14 miles. Fire trucks and ambulances lined the strip like soldiers preparing for battle. Emergency nets waited at the far end in case the brakes failed. Emily tightened her grip. Sweat ran down her temple. Her voice was steady as she muttered to herself, "Come on. Hold together." The wheels touched the ground hard. The plane bounced once. Tires screeched. Smoke billowed. Emily slammed the brakes. The aircraft groaned, metal shaking, hydraulics straining. The brake nets raced closer, 10 seconds away, 5 seconds, 2 seconds, and then silence. The plane shuddered to a full stop. Just 20 feet from the nets, inside the cabin, no one moved. For 5 long seconds there was only silence, disbelief, and then applause erupted, loud, raw, overwhelming. People cried, hugged, shouted. A little boy screamed, "She did it!" But in the cockpit, Emily just sat there, hands still locked on the controls, shoulders heavy with tension, sweat sticking her shirt to her back. She had done it. 320 lives saved. But she knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just luck. It was her. The tourist was gone. The pilot had returned. The plane had stopped. The nightmare was over. But inside the cabin, no one moved at first. 320 passengers sat frozen, gripping their seats, breathing hard. It was as if their minds hadn't caught up with their reality. They were alive. Then, slowly, the silence broke. A child cried. Someone whispered, "We made it." And then, like a wave rolling through the cabin, came applause. People clapped, shouted, cried, hugged strangers. Flight 782 had landed. Against all odds, it was over. In the cockpit, Emily Parker didn't join the celebration. She sat still, hands resting on the controls, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Sweat streaked her face. Her muscles ached from the fight against the machine. Only when emergency lights flashed outside the windows, fire trucks, ambulances, hazmat teams rushing to the aircraft, did she finally exhale. She switched on the Radio, her voice steady as always. Edwards Tower, this is Flight 782. Aircraft is safely down. Request medical personnel on board. 2 pilots incapacitated. No injuries reported in the cabin. When the cockpit door opened, the lead flight attendant, Scott, stepped inside. His eyes glistened with emotion. "You did it," he whispered. Emily gave a faint nod, still scanning. The instruments. Old habits. Get the passengers off safely. That's what matters now. "But they want to see you," Scott said softly. "They want to thank you." Emily looked at the empty runway ahead, her voice quiet. "Right now, they need safety more than closure. Let's get them home." Minutes later, passengers stepped off the plane one by one, guided down portable stairs. Fresh air hit their faces, tears rolled freely. Some clutched their children, others paused on the tarmac and looked back, not at the runway, but at the cockpit window. A silhouette still sat there, the woman who saved them. "She saved us," one man whispered. "Whoever she is, she saved us." Military officers soon arrived, scanning flight logs and crew lists. One name caught their eyes. "Captain Emily Parker," an officer muttered. His colleague froze. "Wait. Ghost Hawk, you're telling me she was on that flight?" The legend had returned. The Air Force pilot who once pulled off impossible missions, thought to have disappeared into quiet retirement, was suddenly front-page news again. But Emily didn't face the cameras. She avoided the reporters. She stood quietly at the edge of the tarmac, watching families reunite, passengers hug each other, children laugh through tears. That was her reward. Not fame, not headlines, just life. One young flight attendant, Brielle, approached her with tears in her eyes. "I've never seen anything like that. We thought you were just a tourist." Emily gave a small smile. Some tourists carry heavier baggage than others. In the days that followed, the world exploded. With her story, news anchors called her the mystery pilot. Headlines shouted, "Tourist turns hero." Old Air Force files resurfaced. Captain Emily Parker, call-signed Ghost Hawk. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Journalists, book deals, interviews, politicians. Everyone wanted a piece of her. But Emily ignored them all, because she hadn't done it for applause. She hadn't done it for fame. She had done it because when 320 lives were at stake, someone had to take control. And she could. Weeks later, Emily sat quietly at home. No spotlight, no reporters, just her old flight jacket hanging in the closet. And a letter from the passengers of Flight 782. Inside were dozens of handwritten notes, thank yous, stories. A child's drawing of an airplane with Emily standing on top like a superhero. She held it in her hands, eyes wet. And for the first time, since the landing, she smiled. A few months later, she returned to a small airfield, not in uniform, not for the military, just for herself. A Cessna sat waiting on the runway. Emily slid into the seat, hands brushing over the familiar controls. The engine roared. Her heart raced. As the plane lifted off, the ground fell away and the sky opened wide above her. She laughed softly into the headset. "Still got it?" her old instructor said over the radio. Emily's reply was simple. Never lost it. She would later tell a room of young aviation students one final truth. When the worst happened, I didn't save that plane because I was a hero. I saved it because I refused to let fear fly it into the ground. And that is how Emily Parker, the woman no one noticed at the boarding gate, reminded the world of who she really was, not just a passenger, not just a tourist, but a pilot, the kind the sky never forgets.